All right, back again for another Soul, Mind, Body. This time with Steve Smith, who is a very interesting person to bring on today, primarily because especially during the time of COVID, we've had a lot of challenges with, as we know, no masks, no church, a lot of outdoor recreational activities are all kind of being pushed aside for right now. And Steve has experience with all of them in every facet of that conversation. Steve, if you can, fill us in a little bit about your background, what you do, and which is a lot of things, but
Yeah.
we'd love to dive into some of those.
Cool. So I'll briefly cover my background. I've been married for 30 years, and we have 3 grown children and a grandchild, and another one on the way. So that'd be 2 grandchildren. And I got into the fitness business and the health business back in 2008. Before that, I was a stay-at-home dad. Before that, an accountant, and decided to stay home with the kids to kind of help raise them, where my wife went to work full-time. So kind of a non-traditional piece there. In 2008, when my kids were really old enough to want me to go out and do something and had a little bit of time, I decided to open a CrossFit gym after finding CrossFit to be extraordinarily beneficial for many reasons. Community, it builds your body to be really strong. It creates a virtue of perseverance, integrity, courage, all that good stuff. And with prayer, with the family, we decided to name it Divine Mercy Fitness, and made it a Catholic CrossFit gym. Keep going forward. During that time, I became a massage therapist because many of you may know, as you do CrossFit, you get pretty beat up at times. And so I found it to be very important to help my clients get through that, and modifying workouts and so forth. And then also, so I'm a massage therapist, and then 2 years ago, we closed the CrossFit gym through much prayer. It was time to move on to other pieces. I guess during that time also, I became a Pietro Fitness instructor. I was looking for a stretching program to bring into the gym, and we actually interviewed a yoga instructor who said that they were very non-religious yoga instructor. I had about 10 people in there, including a few priests, and we were just, okay, let's see what this is like if we can bring this into Divine Mercy Fitness. And after the session, it was like, no way. There is no way that this can be a part of our program. Fast forward to today. Well, there's also another piece, is that my wife and I started a cookie business called Best Darn Cookies Ever. And I've always had a fascination with, and many people I talk to have a similar fascination with cookies, because they're just delicious and wonderful, and they bring you back to your childhood and all kinds of great stuff. And when I was a kid, my brother and I would make cookies quite often, chocolate chip cookies. And my daughter got married about almost 3 years ago, and before her wedding, planning her wedding, she asked me if I would make cookies for the wedding instead of having a cake. And so I said yes, and I perfected the cookie recipe that I used to use to be even better at altitude, because a lot of times you make chocolate chip cookies in Colorado and they turn out flat as a pancake. They still taste delicious, but they're flat as a pancake. So I modified that and created a wonderful chocolate chip cookie. And my youngest son, who's almost 24, said, "Hey, Dad, why don't you start a business making cookies?" I was closing the gym, and I'm like, "No, that's crazy." And then a few months later, my wife and I were like, "Hey, yeah, let's try that. That might be fun." And so that's what we did. So we have that's a tiny little business. That's more of a labor of love. It's so wonderful delivering cookies to people, and it just brightens their day.
Totally.
And it's a wonderful piece. And it fits into our health, I think, discussion in that sometimes you need these little these little pieces. You don't have to be all so strict on your diet and everything. It's nice to have wonderful little pieces here and there to kind of uplift you a little bit.
I was just going to ask you about that because it sounds like when you look at all your businesses, you have a balance, especially when it comes to the soul, mind, body piece. Like you have your faith, you have balance with a good diet, which is obviously crucial, but balance in respect to it's not all good, not all bad. You do emphasize a lot of that, which I would say is more rare than not, especially among the fitness world.
Yes.
Very much that all-in approach. And then diving into exercise and yoga, which I think everything you've mentioned has a lot of stereotypes around. And I think the first one that comes to mind for me, and Pietro Fitness for you, is how does that look? I often hear it among Catholic circles that you should not be doing yoga, that's somehow frowned upon, and I am newer to the faith, was confirmed last year. So for me, I don't really get it. I go to stretch my hamstrings and my quads, my hips are tight, type thing. But if you could help us understand why it's not an issue, and I guess kind of the underlying, why it could be perceived as being an issue.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and kind of can be a hot topic depending on who you're talking to.
Totally.
And so, my understanding, I'm a Pietro Fitness instructor, and so you go to pietrofitness.com, there's a site, there's a link there on their website that'll talk a lot about this subject, about what yoga is and what it means, and go there and look at this further. Yoga is a couple, thousands of years old and developing in terms of what it originally was, and what that was is a ancient Hindu exercise, a spirituality exercise. And at that time, it was mostly sitting in a certain position and meditating to Hindu gods and saying Hindu prayers. And early in the 19th century, that kind of took a different turn with some New Age philosophies who took that piece and made it into more of the yoga that we know today, which is more of the poses and the certain positions in order to continually also pray to these different Hindu gods, and also say different prayers, and also alter breathing to get to an altered state and so forth. My position on that is that is not Christian or Catholic. I think I have no issue with a Hindu practicing their religion and also practicing their yoga to be more into their religion. However, for a Catholic person to practice yoga, it's really Hindu, part of Buddhism and New Age spirituality, which, in my opinion, will lead you away from the Catholic faith, from the Christian faith. And if you go to that website, you will see some pretty specific reasons why, and they're not secret, they're not anything, but they've done a lot of research to tell you why. And if you're a theologian, a Catholic theologian, it'll even make even more sense to you.
Yeah, which I think is mind-blowing for me. I mean, most of the time I sit there and I'm praying to not blow a hamstring. Like, right. I don't, especially if I go take a Bikram class or core power, it's 105 degrees. I feel like I'm in a human pretzel, but not really understanding how it was formed and what to actually be on guard with. Because then on the flip side, you think, okay, is there a Catholic form of yoga? Is that like just doing the rosary while stretching, or how does that look on the flip side for not really knowing what that means?
Yeah. So Pietro Fitness, is like I said, it's a strength and stretching class, and so you're doing stretches, and some of those stretches may look similar to the yoga stretches. Pietro has we don't call it Catholic yoga because we kind of want to move the yoga word out of there because it means something very specific,
Right.
To people. And a lot of people think, oh, yoga means stretching, but it doesn't. It means it's a very specific word that means one, and so they're talking about one, I believe, in divinity, and so yoga starts getting into
Wow.
Divinity, in terms of being God, and instead of having a relationship with God, which is a huge difference between the two. But so a Pietra Fitness class will look like at the very beginning we first of all ask for the intentions of all the members. Then we pray for the intentions of our Pope and our priests and our religious and our bishops. And then we start with the sign of the cross, and then we'll start deep breathing. And instead of taking our mind, and a lot of times in yoga you blank your mind, you try and blank it, and you try to empty yourself. Well, we're human, we're not meant to be emptied. And you know that whenever you have something empty, and the same thing with your body, there's no empty spaces in your body. If there's any empty spaces, it gets filled by something.
Totally.
And usually filled by something you don't want. And it's the same thing with spirituality. And if you try to empty yourself to something else is going to take its place. And what we worry about is, what is that something else?
Totally.
So in Pietra, we focus on having a relationship with God. So we're not emptying ourselves. We're using our intellect, which God gave us, to engage in whatever we're meditating on. And at the beginning of the class, we'll talk about a scripture verse, and that's what we'll be meditating on as we go along. And then halfway during the class, we have actually a meditation where we're in a position, it's called a long hold. We're kind of stretching our fascia a little more, getting things a little more gelled out, ungelled out, unglued, and that's the time to think about the meditation, and then also take it to another level of having, after you come out of the class, having something that you can take into your life to work on, and it's and all these are using scripture, which is beautiful. And at the very end, you finish laying on the ground, arms out, feet out, and just breathing. We're there for about 3 or 4 minutes, and again thinking with Gregorian chant playing, and just thinking about what we're working on. And then by the end, then we finish with the sign of the cross on our knees in front of the cross, and by the end you feel like amazing. It's pretty cool.
Honestly, I think for me it's resonating because I struggle the most personally in my prayer life with a holy hour. Right? Like that, even just the concept of sitting down in silence in prayer for an hour. And it almost sounds like a functional holy hour in that sense when it's done the way you're describing, which I've never heard of before. So that's very intriguing to me because that's a total different shift than I would rather not try to sit down for an hour and just pray.
Right.
But having it guided through that's really interesting.
Yeah, it's very cool. And you can go to pietrafitness.com and they have classes where instructors throughout the country have taken them, and you can take 30-minute class, 45-minute class, 60-minute class, and see what it's like. And it's during this time it's pretty cool because most people are doing that at home.
Doing all virtual anyways. How often outside of COVID, and can people sign up with you? Is that something that, how often are you teaching that?
Well, right now I am actually not teaching it.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't have a place to teach it. I've done a few online classes, and I've looked for places, and I have only had doors shut instead of opened. And so I'm just waiting and seeing when a door will be opened for that, and keeping my skills up and working on that.
That's in the form of like a studio?
It'd be a studio. It'd be
anyone listening.
It'd be a church. Just in an area.
Yeah.
And a time to be able to offer classes.
Very interesting.
Another little piece with Pietra is that you're only allowed, and they prayed about this, and Pietra has a spiritual leader, Father Ezra, and they have their own, father who kind of like prays about, okay, certain decisions that need to be made. And one of the decisions that had to be made was you only have men's classes and you only have women's classes.
Wow.
And the reason is because obviously men and women are very different. And when you have men and women in the same class, I think the focus of men gets to be maybe a little altered.
Yep.
And maybe not in the purest way. And so their decision, and sometimes I'm like, that's crazy, but other times I'm like, okay, that makes sense. So
I joke with Father Brian about it all the time, but when I'm now engaged, soon to be married, when I started dating Steph, I had to quit core power because I didn't. It was something so second nature, but I never realized it. All of a sudden, you're in there and you're looking around, like, well, this is just walking into a minefield, going into that type of scenario. So I'm a big fan of that because that is a huge hurdle for me in general now with this concept. Didn't know the other stuff about yoga in general, but just it's a real thing.
It's a real thing. Yeah. It's a real thing.
Very interesting.
Very subtle. Yeah.
Now, okay, so then when it comes to your massage business as well,
yeah.
And I think one of the questions leading into that, one, tell us more about it, but also, are you seeing now, especially in times of high stress, right? Like there's no doubt about there's a lot of stuff going on with COVID and politically, all these things that are just creeping up. And I think when you talk about emptying and filling, sometimes it can be seen as working out can be a worshiping of the body. Why would I ever need a massage? Yoga could be bad, any of that kind of stuff. But again, from the beginning, what I said too is you have a good sense of balance with that stuff. But given the high stress and all that, do you think people need massages now more than ever, whether it's medical and or however you look at it in general?
Yeah. Oh, I think that's definitely true. I think after, during this COVID time, people are craving touch and attention, and I think a lot of people feel isolated, and that's a huge thing that I think a lot of people haven't talked about is isolation is kind of a scary place, and being forced to be isolated, especially for people who don't have a big family around or lots of people around. That can be very dangerous for their mental well-being, for their health, and very dangerous, especially as you're even more elderly, and even so you're taking someone who maybe feels a little isolated and now is very isolated. Yeah. And so that's one piece, and then we'll go back to the massage. We have different kinds of massage. Therapeutic massage, which is maybe more of a relaxation, maybe more sports oriented, maybe more of a deep tissue, depending on what the person's looking for. Those are generally like an hour session where you full body work on, and you generally after a massage people feel wonderful because it just feels great to have things moved around and just general touch and somebody focusing on you for that hour is something that a lot of people never really get.
Totally.
And then the other piece is medical massage, and I do mostly medical massage, and what that means is a very specific work, massage work, body work for a specific issue. So if somebody comes to me and says, oh, my elbow hurts, I've done all the work online, it's tennis elbow, okay? My lateral epicondyle is really hurting me. And so I'm like, okay, so first thing I do is I sit with you for a half an hour and we go through an evaluation. And I'm thinking, okay, as a massage therapist, a medical massage therapist, I'm trained to okay, this could be just these muscles right here being really tight, pulling on the lateral epicondyle causing pain. Simple, okay? That could be one. And that's what most people go to. Yeah. However, why would these muscles just all of a sudden be tight? Playing a lot of tennis, that could be. Or these muscles are fed by nerves that come out of the spine right here, and then those nerves come down the front of the neck, come to the anterior front of the shoulder, and then feed down the arm. And finally, some of those nerves feed into these guys here. So if any of these nerves along the line are irritated in some fashion, either by tight muscles up the line, or fascia that's tight, skin that's kind of come down. And these can all happen by sitting in a position weird for a long time, working with head forward, all kinds of eating foods that cause maybe your muscles to tighten up because you're having some kind of inflammation response to them. All these different things can cause these things in the body. So if you have a tennis elbow, for these muscles, because these muscles are tight, mostly that's why. But the real reason is because let's say your anterior scalene, which is a muscle right here, is really tight because you've been working a lot and doing a lot of screen time, causing irritation, causing these muscles to be tight. If I fix here but don't fix here, then a couple days later these muscles are going to be tight again, and that's not going to go away. So that's the cool with medical massage. You kind of look at a person and say, okay, what's going on, and get the history, and then do the different tests, physical tests, and see, okay, where is this problem coming from? Which is really cool, because in the medical field, doctors typically, providers typically don't do that.
Right.
They typically will go to the pain, and if they go to the doc, they're going to get a cortisone shot most likely, which will fix it for about 6 months. And then they'll go again, and then it'll fix it for 3 months. And then they'll go again, then it will fix it for a month. And then they'll go again, and it won't work anymore.
Right.
And they still got the same stuff going on.
Right.
And that
possibly get worse.
And that won't
right?
change. And you'll get worse,
Yeah.
because the body will stay in that pain cycle, it's called, and will continue that protective tension.
Yeah.
And so I found medical massage, through CrossFit, and I find it just to be tremendously amazing in what can happen. And you can't fix everything,
right,
obviously, but you can help people with a lot of different pain issues where they've seen other providers and they've ruled out, like pathological disc issues, where you have disc rubbing up against your nerves and stuff like that. I mean, some things you need surgery for, but so many things that should be like the last place you go. And so I found that to be just tremendous. And I can work on people, give them exercises to do, stretches to do, to kind of help move things along.
Wow.
And therapy just, it's like therapy. It takes a little bit of time, but once you're good, you're good.
And this could be for anybody, right? Like, it's not just for the CrossFit, just for the person that's working out, because there's a lot of times, myself included, when I go to genuflect and I'm all beat up and I'm like, okay, well, prayer's going to help me here. Yeah. I'll just pray through this and I'll get relief. But I personally know the value of massages and have yet to work with you, and I would love to. But I think a lot of people get scared off with like, well, I'm not at the gym, or especially now they can't go to a gym, so why do I need this? But I think to what you're saying though, especially where it's the way you're hunched over at the dinner table, and which is causing this pain that a lot of people would never really justify reaching out to you in particular, massage therapists in general, to get that sort of help. But that is, in your opinion, probably more important than just the gym goers. Right.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I pretty much only see people, all walks of life, who have pain issues that they haven't been able to resolve, but that is always there and weighing on them. And when you have pain that's always there and weighing on you, it is ridiculous.
So interesting. Where's your studio at for that?
I work out of a hair salon.
Okay.
And it's over off of near downtown Littleton.
Okay. So, and we'll link all the sources for Pietra, your medical massages.
It's called Virtus Medical Massage, VARTUS, and the website is virtusmm.com.
And where do people go to get cookies?
bestdarncookies.ever.com. And we deliver cookies in the Denver area, and we'll mail them anywhere inside of Colorado. So.
Wow, that's really awesome. Yeah. All different flavors?
Well, that's a good question. We have chocolate chip flavors. We have chocolate chip with pecans, chocolate chip with macadamia nuts. Ooh. And I'm experimenting with a Nutella swirl deal, which my wife said that's what we're going to do, so that's probably what we're going to do.
No better way to demand for perfection than for your daughter's wedding to start a cookie business.
Exactly, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Steve, thank you so much for the information, your time, all the above. We will link all the websites and contact information for you, because again, my mind is still just racing now with the concept of one, yoga, but also massage. And again, they can be hot buttons for people, but understanding the way you're doing it now, I'm intrigued from a physical holy hour and getting those benefits, but also being able to let my mind and body work in the same way. So thank you for clarifying that for me personally, because I had struggled with that.
Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll see you guys next time. And again, we'll provide all of Steve's comment links for his websites, everything after this. Thank you.